Cam Newton has always been more than just a quarterback. He has been a lightning rod, a cultural shift, and a walking challenge to the traditional script of what college football and the NFL were supposed to look like. From the moment he stepped on the field, his confidence, his charisma, and his talent made him impossible to ignore. But the very same qualities that made him a star also made him a target. For over a decade, critics have lined up to take shots at Cam Newton, not because he failed to perform, but because he dared to succeed loudly. They called him cocky, they called him dramatic, they said he was overhyped. They framed him as selfish and arrogant, while quarterbacks with half his ability were framed as passionate leaders. That double standard is not an accident, and it was put on display again when Paul Finebaum, one of the loudest and most recognizable voices in college football, made a claim so outrageous it almost seemed scripted for shock value. Finebaum called Cam Newton the worst player Urban Meyer ever coached. Think about that. Let it sink in. Urban Meyer, the man who built Florida's powerhouse teams, the man who ran a program that included Aaron Hernandez and countless players tied to academic scandals and disciplinary problems, supposedly considered Cam Newton, the same Cam Newton who became a national champion, a Heisman winner, and eventually an NFL MVP, the worst he ever coached. This wasn't just a misguided take. This wasn't just football barbershop talk. It was something much darker. It was disrespect. It was intentional. It was a deliberate attempt to assassinate character under the guise of analysis. And when you look at the pattern of Paul Finebaum's commentary over the years, you realize that this is not random. It's not even about Cam alone. It's about power, control, and who gets to define the narrative in college football. Because when you study Finebaum's targets, there's a common thread. It's always the outspoken black athlete. Always the leader who refuses to bow to tradition. Always the man who dares to step outside the box the media built for him. When Deion Sanders, Coach Prime himself, suggested that college football needed some kind of NIL salary cap to bring stability to the chaos of recruiting, Finebaum didn't debate the merits. He didn't talk about the economics. He didn't consider the long-term health of the game. Instead, he went straight for Deion personally, calling him a hypocrite. He skipped the idea and went directly to the insult. That's not analysis, that's policing. And it's the same policing he's tried with Cam Newton for years. Let's break this down because history matters. Jameis Winston. Finebaum labeled him untouchable before he ever played a down in the NFL. Lamar Jackson. Finebaum said he wasn't a real NFL quarterback. Deion Sanders. Finebaum dismissed him as a distraction. Every single time a black athlete rose to a level of influence that could not be ignored, Finebaum's microphone got a little louder, not to celebrate, but to undercut. Meanwhile, look at the other side. Nick Saban can chew out his assistants, throw sideline tantrums, and call out rival coaches, and Finebaum treats him like a saint. Tim Tebow, who, let's be honest, never came close to Cam Newton's level of dominance in the NFL, is endlessly praised as a leader of men. Dabo Swinney can complain endlessly about NIL and locker room culture, and Finebaum nods in solemn agreement. But when Deion Sanders raises the same point, suddenly it's dangerous. Suddenly it's hypocritical. Suddenly it's a scandal. The problem isn't the message, it's who's speaking it. And that's why Finebaum's comment about Cam Newton hits so hard. Because Cam has always been the embodiment of what Finebaum's old guard wants to police. A black quarterback who doesn't just succeed, but succeeds on his own terms. Urban Meyer didn't push Cam out of Florida because he lacked talent. Quite the opposite. Cam had every tool in the world, but Tim Tebow was the chosen one. Tebow was the face of Florida football. Urban Meyer wasn't about to risk upsetting that balance. Cam saw the writing on the wall. He could sit in the shadows, wait his turn, and play the good soldier, or he could take control of his own future. He chose the latter. He transferred, just like countless other players do every single year. The narrative that he was kicked out is lazy, it's false, and it's been weaponized against him ever since. And then there's the infamous laptop incident. The story has been retold so many times, it's practically been turned into Cam's scarlet letter. Finebaum and others dangle it as proof that Cam can't be trusted. Proof that his success is somehow tainted. But let's deal in facts. Cam has never denied what happened. He was young. He made a mistake. But it was not the reason he transferred. It was not the end of his football journey. And it certainly shouldn't be the anchor chained to his legacy for life. If Cam had been to The truth about Cam Newton's story is that it cannot be erased by a single pundit with a microphone, no matter how many times Paul Finebaum repeats the same tired script. After Auburn, Cam Newton walked into the NFL as one of the most polarizing draft prospects in recent memory. Think about how absurd that was. He had just put together one of the greatest college football seasons ever, carrying Auburn on his back to a national championship. Yet the conversation wasn't about his dominance. It wasn't about his leadership. It wasn't about his ability to turn a program into a powerhouse overnight. No, the conversation was about whether he smiled too much, whether he danced too much, whether he was too confident, whether he was too much for the NFL to handle. Analysts lined up to call him a risk. They labeled him immature. They questioned his football IQ. One scout notoriously claimed that Cam Newton had a fake smile. A fake smile? Imagine being so talented, so generational, that the only way they can attack you is by psychoanalyzing the way you grin. That's not scouting. That's fear. That's code. That's a system that didn't know how to process a black quarterback who refused to play small. And yet, once again, Cam Newton proved them wrong. He didn't just enter the league, he took it over. In his rookie season, Cam threw for over 4,000 yards, breaking records left and right. He made history as a dual-threat quarterback, redefining what the position could look like in the modern NFL. He wasn't a project, he wasn't a placeholder. He was a superstar from day one. But as always, the louder his greatness roared, the more desperate the critics became to silence him. Fast forward a few years and we arrive at the 2015 NFL season, the peak of Cam Newton's professional career. That year, Cam wasn't just good, he was unstoppable. He led the Carolina Panthers to a 15-1 record. He accounted for 45 total touchdowns. He was the league's most valuable player, the first black quarterback since Steve McNair to win the award outright. He danced, he dabbed, he electrified stadiums every Sunday. Kids imitated him in backyards across America. And yet, even in that moment, the media found ways to shift the story. Instead of celebrating his dominance, they fixated on his celebrations. Instead of praising his leadership, they nitpicked his body language. Instead of honoring his MVP season, they demanded humility. They told him to smile the right way, play the right way, win the right way. But Cam Newton has never been interested in winning their way. He wins his way. And that has always been the problem for voices like Paul Finebaum. See, when Tim Tebow knelt in prayer, it was celebrated as leadership and faith. When Cam Newton dabbed in the end zone, it was labeled arrogance and showboating. When Andrew Luck celebrated his teammates, he was framed as the ultimate warrior poet. When Cam Newton celebrated his teammates, he was called a distraction. This is the double standard in plain sight. And it's the same double standard that fuels Finebaum's cheap shots even today. Because if we're being real, Cam Newton's so-called flaws aren't flaws at all. They're the very things that made him a cultural icon. His swagger gave a generation of young athletes permission to shine without apology. His confidence gave black quarterbacks a blueprint for how to lead on their own terms. His joy turned football from a grind into a show, and fans loved it, whether the media wanted to admit it or not. And yet Finebaum, instead of acknowledging that impact, tries to rewrite Cam as reckless, selfish, and ultimately forgettable. But here's the reality: Cam Newton is unforgettable. His story is carved into the fabric of both college football and the NFL. He is a Heisman Trophy winner. He is a national champion. He is an NFL MVP. He led a team to the Super Bowl. He changed the culture of the sport. And most importantly, he did it while refusing to bow to the gatekeepers. That is why Finebaum's comment feels so personal. Because it's not just an attack on Cam. It's an attack on every black athlete who refuses to let the media hold the pen to their story. Just ask Deion Sanders. Coach Prime has been experiencing the same script in real time. The moment he stepped into Colorado and started reshaping the culture, the critics came out of the woodwork. Finebaum didn't just critique his coaching decisions. He didn't just analyze the roster. He went after Deion himself. He dismissed his credibility. He framed him as a sideshow. And why? Because Deion dared to lead loudly. He dared to bring his own swagger to a game that still clings to tradition like a security blanket. When Deion suggested structure for NIL, Finebaum didn't debate the point. He called him a hypocrite. That's the playbook. Don't engage the idea, attack the man. And it's the same playbook he's running against Cam Newton even now. But here's the thing, Finebaum and voices like him can't control anymore the